to go to the first slide. Instead of started.
And you have to see it. Give it.
Alrighty then. We're going to continue our study out of Genesis. We got two more lessons. Well, we got a lesson and a half left on this, and then I decided we're going into Daniel and then Esther. And so, but just because I want to make you guys try and say some of the names in there. But we didn't finish lesson 11. We had a really good discussion about forgiveness and understanding last week, and even my mom said it was a good discussion, and Patty Jennings said it was a good discussion, so people were watching. So anyway, we're still in God's sovereign control, and I'm going to go back and reread our scriptures here just to remind us, except I might have to put my glasses up for this. It's getting better, but the other week I hit myself in the head with a steel bar, and I'm still having trouble seeing close up. Everything's still blurry. It's getting better every day a little bit. Okay, chapter 45 of Genesis, verses 1 to 15. And Joseph could not control himself before those who stood by him, and he cried, "Have everyone go out from me." So there was no man left with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Why are they dismayed?
Well, they sold him. They presumed he was dead.
I think dismayed is not a strong enough word here. You know, I think the writer should have said, and they were shaking in their boots as he revealed himself to them. But anyway, they were upset. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in this land for these 2 years. There are still 5 years in which there will be neither planting nor harvesting, or plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore," now what great deliverance is he foreshadowing here? What great deliverance is he talking about? Lydia?
Israel being led out of Egypt?
That's right. He's foreshadowing, he's prophesying. They have no clue what he's talking about, because it's several generations yet, but anyway. Now, therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he's made me a father to Pharaoh, and Lord of all his household, and ruler over all the lands of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, "Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come, and you and your household and all that you have will be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you've seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here." There's no, you guys stand here a minute. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all of his brothers and wept on them, and afterwards his brothers talked with him. I think it's interesting, verse 7, verse 8. Someone explain to me what Joseph is saying. Now, Egyptians are out in the hall, they hear him, and he says, "God made me a father to Pharaoh." How has he been made Pharaoh's father?
I'm just venture a guess that he's directed him as to what to do during those times of famine and the time of before plenty. Kind of like guidance.
Yeah, he's been made Lord over all of Egypt. So the only thing Pharaoh's having we still do everything for them. So that's what he's kind of saying here. I'm over all of this. I'm Lord over all. He wouldn't have said this if it weren't true enough that he would not have to face charges of insurrection or anything like that. So anyway, question number 3. So what specifically, it's not his forgiving spirit, what specifically is making Joseph not angry with his brethren?
We saw the bigger picture, I believe.
Absolutely. He keeps referring to the fact that God did this to me, not you.
Well, that's the other thing, he realizes God is in control. And obviously he faced adversity, but he had presence of mind, for lack of a better word, to understand the bigger picture. At some point.
Yeah, we don't know when it really came to his, and maybe it came from the very beginning when he started telling his dreams, maybe he understood this greater purpose. Kenda?
He's been blessed in the process. It's an example of, don't hold grudges against someone that's done you wrong, that you'll be raised up also.
Again, he paid for it too. I mean, he's had setbacks. He's been in prison several, times. We need to learn to see the bigger picture, and that's great. It's almost impossible in the immediate presence. When something bad happens, it's impossible most of the time to say what good is going to come out of this, because we have no clue what good is going to come out of it. If you take a person that finds himself homeless and without family support and all that, and yet it makes him get clean and makes him get back on the straight and narrow, then it was a blessing. It's horrible in the immediate moment. I told you a story when Ben was young. We went one night to Boy Scout camp early to get the camp ready because we lived in the county with the camp. And so we're there, we're cleaning, we're setting up our camp, and usually our guys would stay a night or two extra ahead of camp starting. That night, for no reason other than I just didn't want to stay, I told everybody, I said, I just don't feel like it tonight, so let's all go home, we'll come back in the morning, camp starts. But we moved into all our tents and all this, and we came back the next morning, and one of those big, huge Georgia pines, they're skinny but they're tall, had come down and crushed almost all the tents in the night. So in the media, you look at it and say, oh, everything is ruined, all our stuff's ruined, what do we do? After that, that one I figured out pretty quick. I said, I think God had a hand in us not being here, because somebody could have been killed. But because we all went home, spent the night home, we were fine. We just had to reset camp and fix some stuff, and we were good. You usually don't see God's hand in something that quickly, but again, keep your eyes open to figure out when something bad happens in your life, think about it and say, what are the things we should consider? When we see something bad's happening in our lives, what are some of the things we should do to try and evaluate it? One, it could mean
God saying no.
could be God saying, no, you're doing the wrong thing, so fix it.
Turn yourself around.
Yep.
What's my part of it?
Okay, that's one thing. What else could it be? I gotta try and keep these straight in my head now.
It could be a test of your faith also.
It could be some of that molding and shaping that God does with us, refining us. What else?
Could be just an accident.
Could just be nothing. It could be that couple on Highway 20 there that he didn't get the gas turned off and their house blew up. God didn't have a purpose in that I could see. It was an older couple, they just messed up, the house blew up and they were killed.
Oh dear.
That's a couple of years ago, that's a big deal, we heard it all over town.
Well, we don't live here.
Well, you could have heard it down there too. No, he was working on his furnace and just something went wrong, and when a spark or whatever happened later in the night, it blew the house up.
Well, I don't think he had smell either. or
Yeah,
was
he had
smelling.
COVID and had no smell.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't smell anything, they didn't know, and
Didn't
I
know
just-
until the wife came home, and by then, before they could get it all cleaned out, something ignited.
I mean, it blew that house. If you drove out there by it, there was stuff on either side of the highway for hundreds of feet. Yes?
both go together. We don't
I
know.
doubt it.
I don't think that's it, Mom.
I hope they were.
I doubt it.
It was
What, man?
good. Nothing.
Oh, so anyway, I think it was just one, because there are accidents in life that don't mean anything, people die. We get a blown tire, we go off the road, your house catches fire from lightning. We got lucky here with the church building, we had some issues after the last big storm, I'm sure we had a near miss with lightning, but I didn't see anything hurt. But if you look at one of the solar panels over the front door, it is fried. I mean, it took out all the cameras, so I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what. It fried that solar panel. Yes.
Ben was gonna say something.
Who?
Ben,
No, he was just signaling.
I heard him speak.
Did you say something, son?
No.
No, he said no, I asked him. Catch up, girl, catch up.
Okay, well, I guess I'm getting.
Yeah. So, is there something to be gained in looking at it and trying to see if God has a purpose in what's happening?
Can you repeat that?
Learn from it.
You can learn from it if you think about it. Can we always see? No. But it never hurts to reflect on something. Think about it.
Yeah,
Yes,
if you don't learn from history, the saying is you're bound to repeat it.
that's absolutely right. In the military, why do you think we study every war that ever happened in war college? You study great battles going all the way back as far as you can, because there's still something to be learned from the historical tactics. We studied Napoleon a lot. We studied Sun Tzu, who was The Art of Modern Warfare, which was written thousands of years ago.
I think of the Battle of Midway, and I guess I tend to think maybe the providence of God had a hand in that, but, do we know?
No. Will we ever know? Maybe if we ask him. Can we?
I have nothing.
Okay, in what ways did Joseph make his forgiveness evident? What could he have done to his brothers? He could have had them imprisoned and killed. Would have Pharaoh supported that? Oh, absolutely.
He could have turned them around when they came, they'd go back where they come from.
He said, you're on your own?
Yeah.
Yeah? How?
The one thing we see is that he didn't try to take vengeance. He gave it over to God. God, when we look at Romans and Hebrews, it tells us that God says vengeance belongs to him. And that's a lesson we all really can take, it's not up to me to seek vengeance for whatever.
Now, he pulled a couple kind of pranks on him, but there was a purpose to that. What was the purpose? To make sure his father and younger brother came. He didn't want to just tell them what they wanted to have them go. He wanted them all to come to Egypt. And so he did what he did in the initial meeting. But yeah, his forgiveness is evident in that he did not let them starve. He didn't put them in prison. He didn't kill them. He was good to them when they didn't deserve it. And really didn't sell them for stuff he wanted anyway, give them their money back. They got a refund. So, why did Joseph believe? Now, look back in the verses. Excuse me. Why did Joseph believe? What was the bottom line of why Joseph believed he was sent to Egypt? To provide it's a word we see in the New Testament, that there will always be a remnant, right. There will always be a remnant. No matter what happens in the world. Had Hitler won, and all Christians mostly been killed, there would still have been a remnant for God to rebuild with, if he so chooses.
And also, to bring about this very present result, I love that verse, preserve many people alive. That's
Yeah.
great. I mean, it says, in Genesis 50 about you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. But the next part is really good. They bring about this very present result.
I try very hard to, when I feel, and I'll just put it this way, I always say in my own small, quiet say something to someone, reach out to someone, I try very hard to do it, because I have to assume that there's reason for it, you know, and I'll do that with people I know very casually or very minimally. Not too long ago, a young lady who came here for a funeral one time, that's about the major interaction I've ever had with her. I knew a family member of hers who died. I see her in town all the time, but one day I went by and I just said, you know, something to her to the effect of, it's really good to see you, but you look a little down, and I just wanted to let you know I'm praying for you. Is there something you need? And she about started crying and thank you. And she said, no, it's something personal, but thank you for noticing. When you feel it, follow it. Because it might be really important to somebody else. All right, number 6, not verse 6.
Jeff,
Yes,
but if you ask, is there anything I can do, be willing.
be willing to do it. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, on the other hand, I reached out to someone and offered them help. They wanted the help. I made arrangements for them to get the help they wanted, and then they would arrange to get them help, traded work with another counselor in exchange for giving them free counseling, and then they just didn't show up. You know, which means I got stuck doing the work and she didn't. Anyway, no, but, you know, that's all we can do though. I can't feel bad about that. I offered, they asked, I did it. I've done my part. Okay, how does his life demonstrate that he believed God was in control? How does his life demonstrate that?
Prison life.
His prison life? He just went with the flow in prison, yeah, and wound up head jailer or whatever, head trustee.
When Pharaoh's wife was gonna be really bad girl, he wouldn't participate in that.
You mean Potiphar's wife?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wrong person.
No, it's all right. Maybe Pharaoh's wife did too.
It
But
was
no.
a P word.
Yeah, when Potiphar's wife, he refused, and lesson for all of us, he got himself out of the situation at all costs. He ran away from temptation. And that's a good lesson just right there alone. Run from temptation. Don't walk. Don't sit around and say, I'm strong enough, I can deal with it. No, run. Run. All right, so inspiration. The ultimate will of God can never be defeated. Whether we do our part or not, God's will come true.
I agree with that.
He had Abraham and Sarah not done their part, could God have gotten around that? Had Jacob been sacrificed, could God have gotten around that? Had Noah not been faithful, could God get around it?
He figured
In
it
fact,
out.
God's intention was already to kill us all and start over.
Yeah.
But he found Noah. Or Noah found grace in God's eyes, right?
Yeah, good
We
word.
sing that at camp all the time. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. So yeah, God's will cannot be defeated by mankind. But we need to remember our place is to facilitate his will. To make things happen. To be available. You know, if you look at kids, I'm trying to remember my little story here. Well, okay, so in the news, I've got a note here about dams. You know, little kids will build a little dam in a creek. We used to. We had a creek behind my grandparents. And we float little boats down in it and try and catch fish and make little dams and catch some fish in it. And eventually, what happens? The water rises up and washes our little dam away. And big boys make dams. And we see that on the news, there's one now that's about to burst. I've been watching the news the last few days. It's slowly giving way. And that's the way it is with God's will. We can stop his will for a moment, but we can't overcome God's will. God is going to do what God's going to do. So, in our lives, there's many things. There's sins, mistakes, accidents of history, sins of others against us. They can temporarily defeat God's plan, but they can never defeat God's plan. So, one reason I think this is important is, if we miss our opportunity on something, don't feel like you just stopped God's will. Because you didn't speak to somebody, you didn't prevent them from finding the Lord. If they're seeking, God will make a way for them. But, is it okay to feel like I should have done a better job? Absolutely, because it makes us stronger the next time. Terry?
If it comes to your mind, go ask that person how they're doing, whatever it may be. If it comes to your mind and you don't do it, God will find somebody else. But if it comes to your mind and you do it, you got to be the one to give them a gift that they might not have gotten the same way from somebody else.
And we never know when or how that'll come to fruition. It may not be in our lifetimes.
That's right.
Only one of our foster children wound up in a Christian home. That doesn't mean we didn't make their lives better for a time. And who knows what that will lead to in their life someday. Today, I believe, I get very frustrated with these families. That doesn't mean we're not doing something that could help them in the long run. Right? And we do provide safety for a short time. Anyway, I saw a hand. Okay, Steve, and I thought I saw an Hal.
God's timeline doesn't necessarily coincide with our timeline.
Oops.
Right, probably almost never. But that's up to him.
Well, if you look at that, God said he raised up the Assyrians. That was centuries in the making. Maybe even a millennia in the making. But he used it, and he planned for it from the very beginning. I raised that nation up to punish you. How?
You know, when we look at Joseph and we look at what he did, what he did was he was willing to give up his own personal growth or whatever. And we see the same thing in Moses when God was going to destroy the Israelite people. And Moses said, no, please don't do this, because God was willing to raise the nation from him. It never hurts us to say, to do God. We need to overcome our personal ascension and let God take control.
Just like an example of God making things happen. So, on the ark, with Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives, God allowed something to happen. Apparently, one of the daughters-in-law came from the Nephilim, came from the people that were giants. And we know that because in the time of who, with his rocks, Goliath? So we see that God had a purpose here. A great lesson was learned when he won that battle with his 3 little stones and his slingshot. That all goes back to the ark, because they died out before the ark, except for, clearly the genetics was in one of these family lines, and they did not come back as a people, but we know that there was more than one example of Goliath and some others, his brothers, as a matter of fact, fighting all those generations later. So again, you know, that's one of those small things you kind of jump over in the scripture, but it has to happen that way. It has to be in the genetic line, and they come back again, but not enough to win, because they kept dying in battle. So, what is meant by the word omnipotence of God? What does omnipotence mean?
Open in everything.
Omnipotent. Yeah. The now I can't say it. Omnipotence of God. He can do anything, and he can make anything happen. So, when we look at our own freedom of choice and all that, it makes it an illusion. We're only free to a certain extent. God can achieve his powerful. When we say that he's all-powerful, that literally means all-powerful. Let's see.
when you make those statements, can God make a rock that's so heavy he can't lift it?
I say he's too smart to do it. Why,
He knows
why would
that.
he?
Yeah, he knows, but
I mean, yeah, my answer is always, he can do anything, but why would he?
yes.
I can go out tonight and get drunk, none of you can stop me. Why would I?
I would certainly give it a go.
Yeah,
To try to
but
stop you.
I have free will. I can do what I want. Now, I could lose my job. You know, a lot of other things probably, but
Get beat up.
I have free will, but why would I wanna use my free will for things that are, I have no desire to do, really, that won't help me, and would hurt you more than it would hurt me. It would hurt the church more than it would hurt me, yes.
I just look at it because I don't get it. How can you say that God could do that when he spoke everything into existence?
Yeah.
You know, you can't have it both ways.
God created the heavens and the earth. Then when the flood came, God ripped it open to release the waters that were under the earth, which created things like the Grand Canyon. God didn't create the Rocky Mountains, but when he had a flood, it pushed them up out of the ground because the earth changed.
And he killed it.
You know, I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that, yeah, God can make a mountain, it's massive. He's done it before. But why would he make something that people would use to disprove his existence?
Don't.
Yep. God made the crime against Jesus his instrument of salvation for us. That was one of the worst things that's ever happened in this world, but it was one of the best things that ever happened in this world at the same time. So, to those of us who love God, who are called and who cooperate with his purpose, our suffering can never separate him from our love, or us from his love, I mean, or defeat the working of his purpose in our lives. We're not that important in the world. We like to think we are. Especially teenagers like to think they're that important, but we're not that important in the whole scheme of things. Well, we talked about that. God apparently has heartburn and uses a tongue. No, that's not the one. What am I at on here?
Number 7.
No, I'm not ready. No. My slide's not right here. Go back. I did 7.
Yes.
Wait, number 8 is supposed to, boy, I'm not in
Number
sync.
7 on our sheet
Okay.
says, what does it mean?
Think of our situation that's tested your integrity and how did you do it? I'm out of sync with my slides here somehow. So, have you had a situation that ever tested your integrity? Have you ever had the opportunity to steal? Probably. But why don't you? Huh?
Consequences is one reason.
Honor, trust, loyalty.
The 2 guys we just hired for Believe, they were gonna continue working a few more months for, their old agency. But someone questioned because they were working for us on their days off, somebody questioned their, ethics. They quit. They said, why would you ever question our ethics? All these years we worked for you. You know, and they were so offended that someone questioned that they just said, okay, we're done. We're gonna go to a faith-based organization that tries to do things morally. Ben just covered his ears up there, but, I remember Ben talking about having to go in on a person had died, and he had to go in and they had to do kind of an inventory, and Ben, how much money did you find in that lady's freezer or house, whatever?
About 15,000.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And his boss says, you didn't take any of it, did you? Ben immediately pulled out his wallet and had like $10 or $20 in his wallet because, no. You
She
know?
left it for him.
All that cold kit.
Yeah, oh, that's bad.
Dad joke.
Anyway,
Anyway.
you know, what is the side effect of us always clearly, obviously, and publicly defending our integrity? Or showing it, proving our integrity, not telling You had a thought, Steve, I saw it.
Um,
What is the, Chloe, if you always prove your integrity through how you live, what you do, what will be the result of that? People will trust you. When they learn they can trust you, they will trust you. And that means good things for your future. Can they?
They will come to your defense. I know from working at school, I was in a couple situations, and administration quickly came to my defense. And it was a great feeling. I know I was in the BD room, one of the boys told the principal, the adults down there just cuss us out on a daily. The principal said, well, I know you're not talking about LaKenda. And he's like, and he goes, well, no, I'm not talking about her. She says, so that's not true.
I had two of those. One, a sexual harassment complaint against me, and one a racial complaint. And in both cases, it went nowhere because my boss has said, that's not possible. That's not who he is, he wouldn't do it. And I said, well, you have to investigate. He said, you can investigate, but I promise you, and the commander of the entire Army Reserve went with me to the meeting to say, no, not him, we know him. So, when you live a certain way, it almost becomes impossible to question your integrity. Now, can you blow that very quickly?
Yep.
One wrong move.
Yep.
That's right.
One wrong move will ruin everything you've ever done. When have you felt it's necessary, have you ever felt it's necessary to flee from a tempting situation? I think we all have. That's like that small, still voice. If you hear the voice saying, run, run. Oh, don't stay around, kid.
As teenagers, weekly,
Oh, yeah. So many temptations.
yeah.
And you know what? It's okay. When I was young, my dad told me one time, he said, blame me anytime you need to get out of a situation. He said, you can say my dad would kill me. Well, because he would have. But, he said, use me. He said, even if it's not quite true, in that moment, you still know that I would agree with what you're saying. So you can use me to get out of a situation. And I did more than once. I can't do that. My dad killed me. Said that pretty regularly, actually. So, so how as adults do we flee temptation? Because I can't blame my dad anymore, he's gone. Who can I blame as an excuse to say, I'm not going to do that? And blame's not really the right word, but that's what I'm using. I just gave you a hint. Ben?
Well, one, you can just say that's not what God would want me to do. But also, you just have to, at some point, realize that if it's not something you want to do, you don't owe anybody an explanation for it either. Just say no and walk away. You can talk to them about God, but if for some reason you can't be there, just leave. Don't stand there longer and stay in the situation longer to explain it. Just get out.
Yeah, walk away. That's what I meant when God. This is not what God would have me do.
Paul of the Corinthian church says, be not deceived, bad company corrupts good morals.
Get yourself out of the situation ahead of time.
Yeah, so be aware.
Go ahead, Hal.
I spent more than 30 years in sales, and people were all the time offering me drinks and didn't understand, and I just said, I don't do that. I don't do that, and I never did it, because it was just, honestly, I found it easier to say I don't do it than to have to defend every time I didn't want to do something.
And for me, on all my travels, I didn't have to do that very long because they just quit asking. Because they knew I was going to say no every time. If they asked, why do you go, what do you do? Sometimes I go to a movie. Usually I just go back to the hotel room and talk to my wife. You don't get a lot of temptation when you go home and call your wife, as opposed to going out to the bar with the guys. And a lot of times I'd skip dinner. I wouldn't even go frustrated because there's a lot of stuff going on, I believe, and I come here to work and they call me over there to help them with something. And I was really frustrated. And Allison said, you can say no. I don't like to say no to people. I want to help people when they ask. And so, you know, I listened to her last night, and so I sent a text message to all of them. I said, I am not available for the rest of this week. Do not call me. You know, don't text. Now, they called and texted both days, but they didn't ask me to come over, which is what they had been doing. They figured it's easier just to have me come there and talk to them. And I just said, I'm not available. I said, I need to, because I was getting behind in my own personal study, not just sermons. I needed to sit. I get really frantic when I don't sit and just study and read. So today, I left for 15 minutes all day. I was here at 7, still here now, because I wanted a day of just study all day. So, you know, sometimes we have to say no to other people, even though it's not a bad thing to do. But sometimes we need to slow our lives down and just say, I got something else I have to do. And I told the guys, quit calling. This is what I'm doing. I want a day of study. Alright. So what are some healthy options for responding to tempting situations? We kind of covered that, but what are some healthy options?
I like to just walk away.
Walking away?
If you walk away from it, you're no longer in that area, and you're supposed to abstain from the very appearance of evil. So, you could first not go, but if you should find yourself there.
Because sometimes through no fault of our own, we're in the middle of something.
Yeah. Friend just says, I'm gonna stop by here really quick, come on in with me. What? No. Yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
Let's see, movies on the Army base were 25 cents. That's pretty affordable, and they were decent
I
movies.
think those days are gone.
Oh,
Yes, they were $2 when I was there.
it was 25 cents.
Well, it just shows what area you're from. I still think it was the days of Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy and this, no, he's not quite that old. Yeah,
Tuesdays, they were a dime.
that's pretty good. What else? So you can just keep away from the trouble, find alternates. I mean, anything, but especially don't get yourself into it. Think before you go.
We can pray just about any time of the day. And that's, for me, that's a good alternative. So if you're in communication with the Lord, it's pretty tough to not be doing what he expects.
I have a very good friend who is who's a preacher in the Chicago area. I think he's still preaching. But he was very proud of the fact that he had started doing Bible studies in the back of a bar there in Chicago. And he said he had a good crew there. They would come and he would have this Bible study 1 or 2 nights a week. And I said, well, I asked about the appearance of evil. He said, well, Jesus went into the synagogue. Well, Jesus was a Jew first. And, but we talked about other, Paul and some situations on. I said, yes, you may reach out to these guys. But I don't see this as a healthy way to do that. And sure enough, he's still faithful in many ways. But that was the first step in him letting a whole bunch of his standards in his pursuit of being godlike slip. And there's a lot of things he's done since then that I just really can't agree with. And I think it was because he started compromising for what he thought was a good reason, but he didn't think it through. Mike?
Having been through the bar life,
Ring the bell if they've been. Yeah, I know. I did make sure he knows he's got it. Go ahead, bar life.
You have 5 seconds.
It is one of those lifestyles where, looseness of tongue. People will say anything. They're more free to say things.
Lower your standards.
Yeah, and you open up, you say things you wouldn't ever say if you were sober. And I can see the thought of hey, go to where they're at. But eventually, they're still coming into the bar and shooting down a couple of soda pops and then going and listening to the word, if you will. And, yeah, that's where the compromise comes. Well, I can't get them to stop drinking. Well, all right, how do I get them to know a little bit more about the Lord? I had one brother in there said that, every once in a while I have to go to the bar and rescue him. He memorized scripture. I can't believe how much he knew. But every once in a while I'd have to go rescue him.
I'd go in any bar in this town to rescue someone.
Yeah.
To take an alcoholic out of it if they call me.
Give him a ride home.
I would go anywhere to get any of our teens out of trouble, if they found themselves in trouble. My dad, he would not even, like at a business thing, like house on that, he would not even take a soft drink in a glass.
Hmm.
He always asked for a can or a bottle, so that there'd be no question what he was drinking. Yet, over the years, I remember him going and rescuing a man from church who was an alcoholic for many years. And I don't know if he went, I don't remember that when I was a kid, but I don't remember if he went in the bars to get him or waited in the parking lot. But I remember that Dad would on a very regular schedule, have to go get this guy and get him out of trouble. So there's a difference.
I had to sit at the bar stool and talk with him and say, come on, let's go home, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
Now I skipped 11 altogether. How do you encourage someone who is struggling to trust God's purpose will be revealed? How do you encourage them?
Say it again.
How do you encourage someone who's struggling to trust that God's purposes will be revealed to them?
I've had that question asked of me. How do you know that I should, how is it you know you can trust it? Well, first off, it takes a little while. You don't always know right then and there. You don't always know your first year of Christianity. But in time, you start to see it happen. You start to see the results. And at my age now, I see results pretty quick now. And it's because he knows I'm old and it could happen at any time I go see him.
Will we always see everything revealed? Absolutely not.
No.
But yeah, you're right. Talk to them. Share your own personal examples. Give them tools to figure out God's will.
And then give God the credit every single time.
For everything. Doesn't
For
matter.
everything, yes.
Yep. All right. We're going to stop there. It's time for devotion. So next week we'll get into lesson 12. Be the last one in this series. Forgiving others. So we always hit that last week. We'll do it again. Because some people really need help in forgiving others. Now you're both going to look at me. Y'all can discuss amongst yourselves and decide who that was for.
You.
Yeah, it really is. Did anybody here get asked to lead a song or two tonight?
I was thinking I'd go ahead and volunteer.
Go for it, Jackie. Use your book.
Because I ended up not being on the list, so I may as well.
Use a book, please.
I will.
Giving her some drinks. I'll say some really big number it is. And I left her a message.
Casey copies.
No.
still got Friday off, you might wanna work this Friday.
Here's the problem, all my stuff requires somebody else to also submit yes to when I pay stuff, so I say,
Alright. I figured, I was like, I know that this is.
and I told Michelle, I don't know if I just wanna start laughing like that, oh, laughter of doom.
But then break it up.
Or if I'm gonna see the workers, I don't know where I'm at. I said,
I guess we do.
oh, and then I remember this time, when they went, yes, they charge.
Says we were chasing. I'll be really mad if I get stuck paying.
Okay, good evening, y'all. First, let's mark the invitation song, number 882. Or the song after, or the version. You wanna look at that. Number 882. No tears for me. So if you have 882 marked,